I wonder if Mamoru Oshii has ever had to cut William Gibson a check.
I don't know.
Because the first time I saw Ghost in the Shell, I'm just looking around, I'm like, does no one else realize this is Neuromancer? I mean, especially the ending. The ending is the Puppet Master and the Major become one, which is the ending of Neuromancer. I'm like, come on.
I think people just keep on forgetting that Shiro's manga did not take itself this seriously.
Yeah, and it's much more apparent when you look at the animation for the PlayStation game.
Yes.
Just what that was supposed to be. And I'm like, wow, these characters are a lot livelier in this animation. It's too bad it's got PlayStation compression all over it. Because this is a movie I'd actually want to see.
Like I said, I prefer Standalone Complex because I just think that it knows what it is.
Oh, I hate that postmodernist crap that's in that movie. The fucking ontological arguments that they shoehorn in there. The fucking computer program that argues that it exists.
See, that's where, like I said, Standalone Complex had a lot better, because there was this scene where like a nuke is launched at like this island, and the Tachikomas found out earlier in that season that their operation systems were actually on a satellite and being beamed into their tank bodies, so they didn't have their operating systems in their tank bodies anymore. So the Tachikomas like fired the retro rockets on their satellite to crash into the nuke, and essentially they sacrificed themselves to save the island. And while they were doing it, they were singing the song about how great it is to be alive.
Anyway, so this is kind of like a pilot podcast. I don't know if I'm going to be doing this regularly. I'm just going to put this out there to see how it goes. I might call it the Big Bad Movie Podcast. I looked that up earlier today, and was amazed, astonished that no one had taken it. Like, well, that's as good as anything. I might as well just grab it. The other thing I was thinking of was smash cuts, because that's one of my favorite editing terms, is the smash cut. Because that's like the abrupt edit where you go from like one scene to another, and the second scene immediately contrasts the first scene. You could have someone who's like you'll never get me on that roller coaster. Smash cut. Tink 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 tink. Going up the incline. Like, oh shit. So Big Bad Movie Podcast sounds pretty good. So the topic is, if we could rewrite the Fantastic Four movie, what would it be? And I guess I'll just start, because mine's going to be more general than Ben's probably is going to be. By the way, Ben Carver right here with me. Guest.
Absolutely.
So the idea was that I hate the way movies are done today, where we have to have an origin story, because that's how they think with like video game and comic book tie-ins. We have to explain how we got to this point. We can't just start the movie with Mario in his overalls. We have to go back and explain how he got there. And I'm like, no, we don't. We could just start the movie with them being.
We have to explain how he jumps. He needs boots.
Yeah, we have to give him like rocket boots to explain how he can jump over his own height.
And he can't have a fire flower, so he needs a flamethrower.
Yeah, he needs a what was that fucking thing called on the Super Nintendo? The bazooka looking stupid thing.
Oh, the Super Scope?
Yeah, the Super Scope. Yeah, we need one of those, because that was still selling in 1994.
And that way explains how he can shoot fireballs, because a flower doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it's like, I've noticed that a lot of these movies, they look at what the property is as it appears now, and they go, we got to get to that point. My whole thing is to do the opposite of that. Just start the goddamn movie and have them already established. And I realized partway through this is that I was kind of pitching what is already The Incredibles. Because The Incredibles is the Fantastic Four done correctly. But my idea was to start with the villain, because Dr. Doom is probably the one you have to establish first, not the Fantastic Four. You can work with the Fantastic Four through the movie and build their characters then, but you got to get the villain in there first. So my idea was that he was going to be like the man in the Iron Mask. The movie starts where he's this mysterious prisoner, and he's like the long lost prince of Latveria, and he's been in this dungeon, held by I don't know if you would want to use King Zorba, but you could do that where King Zorba has taken over Latveria, and the people of Latveria who were dedicated to the original family find out that Victor is in this prison, and they get him out and they spirit him away to to America. Like the Shah when the Ayatollah took over, and
So he's like a king in exile.
yeah, he's like a king in exile, and he seems like a good guy, but his brain's been kind of fucked up from being in prison all his life. And again, the Fantastic Four already established in this movie, so they already have their powers, and you could do like the origin in the opening credits or something where like it's so hokey anyway, you might as well just do it. You show them in the shuttle, going up into space, and they're bombarded with the radiation, with the cosmic rays, and that's how they get their power, and you don't address it again. Except, you have like the isotope, that maybe like an isotope, so there's something there so that, Doctor Doom can expose himself to that, and that's how he gets his powers. But he gets the Fantastic Four to help him take back his country, and that's like the first act. So like over the course of the movie, you discover that he's actually a bad guy, and he takes control to enact an even worse sort of evil. And this is where my kind of synopsis gets kind of vague, because I was like, well, what could he do? Because if I just say revenge, then because that's like every villain. So I kind of my synopsis kind of craps out there. But the way I thought about ending it would be like, I saw this one comic. It was like, I thought it was like the perfect encapsulation of Doctor Doom, where like the good guys win and he's beaten down in the streets of Latveria, and the people come out and they help him to his feet, and he brushes himself off and says something like, "You forget, here I am God." And that's kind of how it ends. It's like they helped this guy get back into power, and they kind of won, they kind of beat him, but they still kind of lost. And that can set up a sequel, whatever you want to do. But that's kind of what I was thinking of, is do something more interesting with Doctor Doom than just have him be like the fifth wheel in the Fantastic Four, like they always do with these fucking movies, where he doesn't become evil until like he gets bombarded. For some reason, he's more evil, and the other four aren't.
It's not bad. I agree with you. You can start with the Fantastic Four already in the Baxter Building. They're already established. They're well known. Maybe even like do it like it's been 1 year since the faithful shuttle flight, where et cetera, and do it as sort of like maybe there's a do it maybe as the intro, but maybe do it as like a news story thing, where basically you start with like a news crew interviewing them, like I said, it's been 1 year since, and maybe show that they're starting to show some seams cracking along the team at this point. They're still getting used to this family thing. Reed and Sue keep trying to talk to each other, but Reed's obsessed with his work, and Sue wants to pull him to pull his head out of his work. Johnny and Ben Grimm still constantly bickering and fighting, haven't found that mutual respect yet. But they are still the Fantastic Four. They're still a team, but they haven't yet found that core of their family yet. I would argue try to do a movie without Doom, because I think Doom is the biggest crutch, because Doom has such high expectations as one of the most iconic comic book villains, and by trying to rush into introducing the four and then Doom in the same movie, you create this problem where you can't introduce Doom too quickly, or else he comes off as a comic book villain.
Yeah, and that's actually something I was thinking about, because the way I have it written is he can also be kind of like a Bond villain, so that he doesn't actually have to be the first villain. You could just drop him in anywhere and do this story and have like another story before it if you wanted to. So that's kind of what I was thinking. The other thing is that about the origin again is that my movie would be like 100 minutes. None of this epic length 2.5 hour crap. So that's why the origin story is automatically out, because it dominates the goddamn movies. I mean, you got Superman, Man of Steel, where it's like, I don't know, I can't really quantify how much of the movie, because it cuts back and forth, but it's like a good chunk of the movie before he's even Superman.
Yes.
And even the original from 1978 or 79 was it wasn't too bad. It was maybe like 40-50 minutes before you get to Superman, which is actually much improved from Man of Steel.
Yes. And you don't get any of that assholery, I'm going to wreck someone's livelihood because they threw a beer can at me.
Right.
And again, what I would do is I would actually I would have the wizard be the villain of the movie. Because the wizard is basically, he's not actually a wizard.
Okay.
His name is Bentley Whitman. He's another tech guy. Basically, if Reed Richards has a guy that's as good as him in tech, it'd be the wizard. And the wizard, I would actually borrow some elements of Doom's origin, and maybe the wizard went to school with Reed in this movie continuity at least, and was always upstaged, and basically seeing Reed become Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four was like the final straw, and the wizard, with just tech knowledge and his ability to build tech, tries to go against Reed and his family, and he forms the first incarnation of the Frightful Four, which is because there's been several different Frightful Fours. And I think again, the Frightful Four, you don't explain who they are, you just have them show up. The wizard is the only one you flesh out. The Frightful Four, people are used to universes with superpowered people by now. You don't need to flesh all of them out. You introduce the Frightful Four. You have the wizard, and you only flesh out the wizard. You have the rest show up. You have like Hydro Man show up. That is, if Sony gives the rights for Hydro Man. Maybe Titania to fight the Thing, and you go that direction. I think, and I think that will work best, because then boom, you have like Hydro Man versus Human Torch. You have Titania versus the Thing. You have the Wizard versus Reed, and you can have like a really good like team battle. And that maybe that's where they like truly bond and become a family, more than just, hey, we're the Fantastic Four. That's how I would do it. I would. I like the idea about the Man in the Iron Mask that you said for Doctor Doom. I like the idea of deposing another head of state and installing Doom in. It actually reminds me a lot of The Most Dangerous Man.
Yeah, that's another thing I was kind of basing it on. The Most Dangerous Man in the World, which was the kind of distant precursor to G.I. Joe the movie, where Hasbro basically fucked them on that, because they had the idea for this Karl Marx figure that he had the philosophy behind Cobra and everything, and then Cobra Commander warped it. I don't know if you can really warp Karl Marx beyond what he already was, but that was the analogy they used. But he escapes, and Cobra scrambles to find him, but G.I. Joe finds him first. And then they let him go, figuring that he'll be more trouble to Cobra if he's free. Basically, G.I. Joe kind of like makes a deal with the devil. And it's kind of like this weird cognitive dissonant ending. It's like, what did we do? Which would have been awesome. And then Hasbro came up with the Cobra Emperor, which turned out to be Serpentor. And
La 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 la.
Yeah, and they were like, how do we explain this within the context of what we wanted to do? And Hasbro was like, well, you can do both. And they're like, no, we really can't. And then they made the movie, which was about how Cobra Commander came from a race of reptile people.
Like, if you watch that footage of George Bush Sr. and slow it down just enough, you can see him turn into a reptilian.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like that. I don't know if that was around back in the 80s or if Sunbow actually predicted that, but...
Well, they're putting stuff in the water to make the frogs gay.
The funny thing is that obviously was not what Cobra Commander was, because you see the back of his head in earlier episodes, and he's not a reptile guy at all. He's just this disfigured man. But they did that, and then they explained where Serpentor came from, which was that Cobra Law didn't like what Cobra Commander was doing, so they implanted the idea of making a new emperor in the mind of Dr. Mindbender. And that's how we get to G.I. Joe the movie, where Cobra Law shows up and launches spore pods into the atmosphere that turn people into monsters, and it's dumb. I mean, it's an okay movie. It's just if you really analyze the plot, it's kind of stupid.
Well, in the comic books, Cobra Commander was a used car salesman.
Yeah. See that I hear that, and that's just I don't even know where to go with that. It's like, but why?
Can't you just imagine Chris Law says, "What will it take to get you home in this Honda today?"
In that shrill voice.
Yes.
Anyway,
But again, with the Fantastic Four, I would focus on they're already a family. 1 year later, start with like a news interviews, some cracks in the team. Villain's gonna be the Wizard. Frightful Four. Go for it from there. I mean, and I would be very careful. I mean, I might throw in a Herbie reference, like like Reed's trying to build a robot helper. It says, "Hi, I'm Herbie," and starts breaking down. Sparks start flying out of its circuits, and he says, "I'm still working on it." I would do something like that. No Fantastic Car though, because I feel like the Fantastic Car is just not a good idea for the first movie, and no, it's not a Hemi. Why do they do that? Again, I would avoid doing Doom as the central villain for the first movie. In fact, if we can find a way to tie Doom into, like him being this prisoner, man in the Iron Mask, rightful heir of Latveria, subplot into the whole thing with the Wizard. I don't know how you do it. I mean, maybe this is becoming like Spider-Man 3 of a mess if we try, but I like the idea so much that maybe it's worth exploring.
yeah, I would definitely do a one villain at a time thing, but you could hint at things. I mean,
Yes. Because the biggest thing is you don't have Doom be a villain in the first movie if he even shows up. You just have Doom. And the one thing about Doom is he has to be unmistakably Victor Von Doom. I mean, and I think that's one thing that lots of people miss is and again, Doom is not a villain in his brain. Doom doesn't wake up every morning and go, "Gee, I need to drown a bag of puppies today."
exactly. He's lawful evil.
He thinks he is the hero. He thinks he is the hero above all other heroes. He's doing what no one else is willing to do, and he's doing what only Doom has the responsibility to do.
And because of that, he has kind of a sense of honor, and he would not break his word if he gave his word to Reed Richard. So you could work that in somehow,
Yes.
where he's undone by his own promise or something.
Yes. And it depends. Here's the question for you. Are we going best case scenario, this is in the MCU, or worst case scenario, this is in Fox?
I was assuming that it was just going to be Fox, so there's no hint of any other Marvel in there. But you could adapt it if you wanted to.
Because worst case scenario, it's only Fox. That actually helps a lot of things. Because best case scenario, people there'd be tons of people saying we got to slip this in, we got to slip that in, you got to slip this in, because even I'm thinking, if it was MCU, I'd be like, okay, I would do this sequence where you would actually have Doom at Kamatosh for a while, because Doom has to learn the mystic arts somewhere. And maybe he gets kicked out of Kamatosh. Maybe we see a sequence where he gets kicked out, and that's in like 2 seconds later. You see Doctor Strange walk in. I'm just saying that if you again that's the sort of lure of, if you include in the MCU, is you have this almost need of, you want to do those sorts of things, even though you have your brain saying you shouldn't.
That's a good reason to have I would have you on board, because I don't have the lore on my side necessarily. I'm just kind of like winging it, where I'm like, okay, he's kind of like the guy in the Iron Mask, so why not do that? Because that's actually like French lore. There's like a story of some mysterious prisoner who was in the dungeon. He was in a mask, and no one really knows who he was. And they made a oh geez, that's right. They made a Four Musketeers movie where they kind of did that, where it was like the guy in the Iron Mask was actually the long lost
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, he was the lost heir to the throne.
But
so, yeah,
it is a good idea, and again, I like the idea of just including Von Doom, and to where the end of the movie, the victory is Victor has his rightful seat as ruler of Latveria. And again, I would have it to where the things that he's doing in Latveria, on the surface are positive things. Medicine and clean water are being provided to the citizens. schools are opening up, but it's like these things are happening. The quality of their life is improving, but they're all hailing doom. You know, hail doom, hail doom, and the four just look at each other
Like,
like,
this is fucked up. What have we
oh
done?
my god,
What have we helped create?
yes,
And that kind of puts them on the hook,
yes.
which is kind of a neat idea.
But again, like I said, on the surface, you know, they have clean water again. They have working schools and stuff, and things are looking up. You know, they're playing baseball in the fields, and but it's hail doom, hail doom. It's like wait a minute,
The catch 22.
yeah,
Oh, and the other reason I wanted to do the man in the iron mask is it kind of explains where the mask comes from, so that you don't have to explain it. Because I hate having to go out of the way to explain where the fucking mask comes
well, it's
from.
obviously because Cobra Commander injected them with metal nanites. And wait a minute,
Yeah, yeah. That I hate the origin in both versions of the movies because they're just so stupid. But if it's a mask that he wore as a prisoner, maybe it's kind of like fused to his skin because it's been on his face for so long. So that, if you wanted to take it off, you'd have to surgically remove it. You'd probably do more damage than good.
yeah.
So he's just stuck in it.
Actually, I
And
can see it as a point of pride for Doom that he doesn't want to take it off. He wants them to know he was the prisoner.
that could be too.
Because you got to remember Doom is driven by his ego, and and I like the idea that Reed is the master of science. And again, that's partially why I was like, let's do the wizard, because the wizard is also his match science to science, while Doom is always like, oh, I know science and I know magic, and I'm kind of like this quasi both kind of guy. And so I would go all science. I would have this battle where the wizard's throwing out all these like little tech devices that keep on doing these things, and Reed's trying to like create and invent and throw out his own countermeasures as fast as he can build them. Because I think that would be a cool way of doing it. Because you don't really see two super scientists fighting each other like that, because usually it evolves into something like water spout on hot metal at the end of the movie and whatever.
I was I was thinking that because another reason to skip the origin story was that you can concentrate on the characters, because that's kind of the problem I have with Ghost in the Shell, like we talked about earlier, is that there's so much of this, just overthinking things that like they don't have room for characters anymore. And instead of doing origin stories, I would just do the character interactions and just let that fill out the movie. Have this inner turmoil between all the characters and have them kind of come together at the end. Because that to me is like the genesis of a good story, is not just what the journey is, but who is on the journey. And, you have to be given a reason to like these people. And a lot of these movies, they just don't do that, especially not in the Fantastic Four films. You're given no reason to like these
Well,
people.
actually, that's kind of true. I mean, other than the awesome performance of Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm, the Thing, I think he knocked it out of the park. And I think the fact that he was like, no, put me in a suit, made it work, because you could have like this CGI thing that looks like shit, like Fan Force Stick, and boy did that look like shit, didn't it?
Oh, it looked horrible.
Or you could have like an actual suit, like what Michael Chiklis put on.
Yeah, I didn't mind that so much. I mean, at times it kind of bent in a way that's like, yeah, that's not rock, but it looked fine enough. You could tell that someone was there.
And again, I feel like Chiklis, acted his ass off in that movie. He was trying so hard to be Ben Grimm. I think that everyone else like meh, but Chiklis worked so hard in that movie. I feel like it's almost a shame that we have to like ignore those two movies, because it's gonna be hard to find someone like him to play another Ben Grimm. I mean, you'd have to find like, who'd work? Now hold on a second, and I want you to really think about this before you dismiss this. Mickey Rourke.
I could see that. You wouldn't have to put any makeup on his face.
But you get what I'm saying. It's like
Yes.
you want like a blue collar kind of guy, a guy who's not too pretty, you know. So I think a guy like Mickey Rourke could work. I mean, You don't want like a Ben Affleck or a Matt Damon. You want an older guy. You want a guy who looks a little beat up. Um, who would you cast for Reed?
Oh, I don't. Yeah, I have no idea. I'd never even thought about that.
I have a suggestion that some people might think is a little weird, but again, Bruce Campbell.
That could work. He has that face structure.
Yes, and he has a little bit of gray already.
So who would you have as Sue Storm?
That's the hard thing because anyone I pick has to be a sexy blonde, and people are going to be like, "Well, she's just a sexy blonde." I mean, I think that's the first
Yes.
part. I think that's the first problem people have with Jessica Alba was, yeah, she's sexy, but she wasn't a blonde. She was a blonde in a bottle.
I don't know. I didn't have that problem.
You have to have a blonde, and she has to be a blonde. She has to be an actual blonde. I would actually pick an older blonde. Shoot, what's her name? Like a Charlize Theron.
That would work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd pick a Charlize Theron. I mean, I know Bruce Campbell would thank me for that casting.
Thank you, sir. Groovy.
Now Johnny Storm could be any young actor. I mean, you don't really need to like hunt for any specific young actor. Just any young hothead could do it. I mean, even Chris Pine could probably do it. Honestly, yeah. But yeah, Ben Grimm, Mickey Rourke. I would have Mickey Rourke.
Another reason not to do the Origin is you'd have to like really like CG him to reverse all of the scarring.
Well,
Be more work to do him as like the pre thing.
like Angel Heart era Mickey Rourke.
Yeah. They could do it. They did it to Robert Downey Jr. in what was it?
Civil War.
Civil War, yeah.
That's true. That's true. But they better not do what they did with Tarkin in Rogue One. Oh my God!
Oh, that was horrible.
You know what the worst part about that was? Was when they first did it, it was just a reflection on a mirror on a window. And I was like, you know what? Okay, this is not too bad. They understand their limitations. They're just doing his reflection. Oh my God, he turned around. What's wrong with his face?
Yeah, and they did a few close-up shots. The shots that I've seen, because I never paid to see that movie. But for some reason, they got up really close and practically sticking the camera up his nose. And I don't remember any scene in the original Star Wars of them being that close to him. He was always in like a wide shot or something. Yeah. They could have done that.
Again, like I said, when they first showed him, it was a reflection on a window. And I was like, okay, it's passable. They understand the limitations. And then when they zoomed down to have him turn around, I'm like, no, they don't. They just want to show off.
Yeah, and
because they didn't need to show Leia's face either.
And for that split second, I'm like, well, maybe they don't have the same technology as Marvel. Because wait, Marvel's Disney. God damn it.
They just tried to do too much is the problem. They tried to go way too far with it. And they're trying. In fact, you know what? My theory is they were trying to do this as a way to say to actors, we don't need you anymore.
I've been kind of wondering for a while now how fast we're going to approach that. We're basically all acting from now on is just going to be like, hey, can you do a Humphrey Bogart? Or can you do Cagney? Or, just trying to market the old stars like they're doing new movies.
Yeah.
And I wonder how long it's going to be until we do that. Someone is going to try to cross that threshold eventually. Just be like, hey, we have a new movie starring, I don't know.
Marlon Brando.
Yeah, a new Marlon Brando movie. How about that? Huh?
Streetcar era Marlon Brando.
Yeah. And the voice is going to sound terrible because anytime you have someone who's trying really hard to sound like someone else, they always do that unnatural delivery. Kind of like how Kermit sounds like now.
Now, to be fair, the guy who did the Rob Paulson impersonation, Turtles Forever, was extremely close.
All of them were pretty close.
Even their Cam Clark impersonation was pretty close.
Yeah, except they didn't do the inflection the way Cam Clark does it. It's all I hear whenever he's in something. It's like, I'm Leonardo, leader of the Turtles.
I'm Kaneda.
Yeah, Akira. Tetsuo. Robotech, he's like, Minmei's pretty cute. She's pretty nice for 15.
my god.
Or that one episode of Denver the Last Dinosaur where he's doing two characters over an establishing shot, and you can't tell who's talking to who. It's like, we should make a movie. Who's it gonna be about? I know. Let's do it about Denver. Why do you cast two characters as the same guy?
Because reasons.
Yeah. Especially Cam Clark, because Cam Clark cannot change his voice. Anyway, what were we talking about?
We were talking about the Fan 4 stick.
Oh, God. That terrible movie.
That movie
Actually, I shouldn't say that because I haven't seen it, but I've seen enough of it. I've seen the wig that changes from scene to scene.
Oh, my God, that wig.
That
wig.
The pickup shots where you can tell which scenes were the pickups.
Yeah. I've heard people who've seen it, they're like, what the fuck is going on?
What was that? I think it was a Fantastic Four movie, but I'm not sure. Because he clearly wanted to do something else, and he just kind of shoehorned Fantastic Four into that. Or vice versa.
He wanted to make Chronicle. And Chronicle's worth watching, but not for the videography. I mean, Chronicle is like a Chronicle's a superhero origin story that doesn't have a license. Like, so these are basically heroes that aren't owned by anybody. So it's like, original character do not steal origin story. And then everybody steals Chronicle. Like, even the fucking Power Rangers movie is using Chronicle elements.
Why does that exist?
Because people thought it was a good idea. And apparently people continually tell me, no, Ben, this is actually good. I'm like, I will never see this in a theater. But back to Fantastic Four.
See, the problem is, I think if people heard my synopsis for Fantastic Four, they'd be like, well, that sounds like a terrible movie because it's moving along too fast. And they kind of forget that that's how movies used to be. And,
yeah.
And, you know, I find that movies today are just like, they're kind of like miniseries in disguise. It's like somebody took 3 episodes of a miniseries, stitched it together, and made a movie, and it's just too goddamn long. I hate 2 to 3 hour movies. I really hate slow building first acts, because unless you're doing something like King Kong where you're actually building to something, you're just gonna have like a popcorn fart in the middle of the movie where, you know, you're just building to what these characters are going to be anyway. And everyone knows who the Fantastic Four is. You don't have to build up to it. It's like, oh my God, I have stretchy skin. It took us 50 minutes to get to this point.
Well, the sad thing is I think and people are going to go, oh my God, but the Roger Corman Fantastic Four moves along at a fairly brisk pace if you actually watch it. I know, yes, it is an origin story again, but it moves very briskly. I mean, have you seen it?
I've seen pieces of it. Once upon a time, people actually believed in getting the origin out of the way quickly because you just want to tell the story. It's like, look, we got a 3-act structure. We don't want to spend a lot of time on this. And nowadays, it's like, we don't have a 3-act structure. We have like a 5-act structure. It's like, Act 1 is where the characters aren't the heroes at all. They're just normal people living their everyday lives. I gotta deliver a pizza. I'll be back later. And then the 2nd act is when things start happening. They start getting their powers. And yes. Then the 3rd act is actually what the 1st act would be in a normal movie, where the plot actually starts to kick in. And I hate it. It's so slow.
Again, the Roger Corman film, I think they have their powers in 20 minutes.
Good.
And you know, people like bash on it. And again, you know, Roger Corman is not a great director, but he's a competent director.
Yeah, I think he knows what he is, and I think he makes what he wants to make.
Which is usually like Carnosaur or...
Yeah, him and the guy who does Trauma, I think they both know exactly who they are and what their movies are about. It's not like these modern day disaster directors that just don't know what the hell they're doing, like Josh Trank.
Again, it's, you know, focus on one villain, avoid overusing Doctor Doom. Throw something in about him knowing magic, because I like the idea of the magic I like the magic versus, he has metal powers, because I think the metal powers thing is kind of like a quick ad hoc way of why he can do like energy blasts, and he has
Yeah,
another
I
suit.
think I actually like that better than what I was doing because I didn't actually know. See, because I don't read comic books, so I didn't really know exactly where his powers came from or if he really had powers. So I was kind of like, well, you can kind of tie him into the origin of the Fantastic Four, but I don't really like him being like Reed's buddy because that kind of like deflates him being the ruler of a country. It's like, how do you get these to mix? It
Yes,
doesn't make any sense. So
I
I
agree.
like him being kind of foreign from the Fantastic Four, where he can just be his own thing.
And again, this is part of where if this was part of the MCU, you could always have it to where, yeah, he studied Tony Stark's designs. That's where his armor came from, obviously with his own improvements. And yes, he went to Kamata and he learned some of the mystic arts before he was kicked out. So that's how he has the fusion of magic and technology. That's if it was part of the MCU. If it's not, easily you could always say, oh, he's learned robotics, and just quote learning robotics, you can build an armor suit. You know, because Lord knows, the GI Joe movie did that. Oh, these are accelerator suits because Iron Man was big last summer. There's no real way of addressing that. It's other than
You either gotta over-explain it or just kind of brute force your way through. And I would rather brute force my way through. Just okay, we gotta get past this. Yeah, okay. It's like I know you got to get the origin in there somehow, and I just want to get it out of the way. Do it in the opening
exactly.
credits. Just have this big. You could even be like really bombastic with it and have like a James Bond type opening song, and it just shows the whole thing in a really abstract, cool way, and just
Yeah,
get it out of the
yeah,
way.
and again, you could even even take some hints from Iron Man. Like I said, Iron Man has a great origin story. Doctor Doom is the man locked in the tower, the man in the Iron Mask. Maybe that's where you could get the part where he was a genius. He's locked in a tower, just like how the origin of Iron Man, the first Iron Man movie, of him building the armor to escape. Do the same thing with Doom. Doom built his first armor to escape
That could be.
and have him show up and like he hears about the Fantastic Four. He shows up because he hears these are quote heroes. And of course he doesn't align himself as a villain. He thinks himself as a hero. He's like, well, I'm going to need some help to retake Latveria. He goes to them for help, and you know. And you could even have it to where Latveria claims he's a war criminal. They want him to hand him over. Um, you know, Reed's trying to be logical about it. Sue's trying to be emotional about it. Ben just plain out doesn't trust him, and they decide, technically, what, he's not a war criminal, he's the rightful heir. We're going to help him get back to, get his country back, and that's where he could lead up all of the action. That way we tie into, we get some notes from the other movies. Doctor Doom builds his armor to escape. There you go. There. That's how he has his armor. That's how he has power armor, so to speak. I think that might be the best way of doing it.
Possibly.
Honestly, gives you a good action set piece in like before the 1/3 mark ends. Um. So again, I would just avoid having Doom as the villain in the first movie. Just avoid it like the plague, because if you have him as the villain in the first movie, you are going to make him like a
Yeah.
comic book villain.
And kind of blow your wad in the first movie too, which is something you don't want to do.
No.
That would be like doing the Avengers as like the first movie instead of building to it.
Yes. Or having Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman fighting Doomsday in the
Yeah.
first. Oh wait.
Hate to say I told you so, but
DC had every chance to make a cinematic universe that worked.
yeah,
They
they
just
chose
chose
not
not to.
to. I think they're just taking themselves way too seriously.
Again, it's like you have to understand that the people who love this stuff uh, knows that there's a certain level of schlock in this superhero genre. I mean, I'm not going to say it's all schlock. I mean, some people like the serious stuff
Mm-hmm.
in it too, but I think the stuff that best reverberates with the readers is the stuff that knows how to do like a wink and a nod to
Yeah.
the reader. Like, yeah, we know what's going on.
Yeah, I get the feeling that a lot of the superhero movies that don't work because the people producing it are kind of embarrassed about what the origin stories are. They're like, oh, this is really silly, so we have to kind of modify it a little so it's not quite so silly. And that's what makes it bad, is when they try to make it like different from what the comics were. I mean,
what made Ant-Man work?
That
Ant-Man has like a stupid story.
Yeah, it's a totally stupid story, and it worked because they just went with it. See, that's something that like Sony or Fox would never have done. If they had Ant-Man, they'd be like, oh, what do we even do with this?
Another great example of this is have you watched the Netflix series at all that Marvel did?
No.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
I think the first Daredevil series worked best out of all of them. The rest of them tried to be explainy.
Yeah, the explainy thing is what I don't like.
Like, people have this need of saying, "Oh, well, this is why this is happening." This is why the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series does not work, mainly because Captain America, Winter Soldier shut down S.H.I.E.L.D., and you can't have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when S.H.I.E.L.D. is shut down, and the TV show tried to explain that.
Yeah, that's when it gets really cumbersome, and that's people don't want the lore dictated to them. They just want to sit down and turn their brains off.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably wrap this up because
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if this is going to continue, but if you want to be on the Big Bad Movie Show, drop me a line, neil.purcell@gmail.com. If you got a movie idea, this isn't going to be like a rewriting the movie show. This is just going to be like general movie talk. Like, make fun of bad movies, talk about good movies, anything that suits your fancy. I don't really have a format because, why just commit to one thing when you can just be general? So that's pretty much it. This is TV's Mr. Neil, and Ben joined me for this episode, and we'll have him on again.
Yes.
If the show continues. A little bit of a train wreck, but yeah, that's our show, and good night.
And we're sticking to it.